Yeah, check it out. Episode 444 of A2 The Show. Wow. Traveling around the world to cut our best in New York. I'm here in Saudi and David in Austin, Texas. How's it going, David? Good morning.
Really good. Good morning, guys.
Good
Good to be
morning.
with you.
Good morning.
And how cool is it we have David on the podcast? David is a great actor. He's been on all kinds of TV shows and films, and now he's a psychotherapist. And that's a lot of experience. And you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself, David?
Yeah, I grew up in Canada. I was born in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Canada, which is I don't know, it's an interesting Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. It's fun to say.
Yeah. Is that up north or?
Yeah, it's due north of Montana. It's right in the middle of the country. So my dad's side of the family is there. You grew up, typical Canadian, playing hockey and all of that. And when I got into college at the University of Toronto, I got into acting and eventually made my way to Los Angeles. Started my career there and got involved in television and got some success and managed to, work in the industry for, 20 plus years. And then I found this therapy. This core energetics is what it's called, the somatic psychotherapy. Like a lot of actors, I was interested in therapy. I mean, as an actor, it's all about your emotions and understanding yourself. So most actors are in therapy or curious about therapy, and I was as well. And but this core energetics, it just something about it really I took to it, and I was fascinated by it, by the process of it. It's a somatic psychotherapy, and it uses different physical techniques like hitting and punching and kicking. It really helps you feel your feelings, not just talk about your feelings. Mm-hmm. And I loved it and made great progress with it. And so then I just did more and more of that, and then went to the Institute to study it. And while I was acting the whole time, and then just eventually it became my career. It's where, I got into acting just because that's what I wanted to do. I was just following my heart, following my passion. And it was the same thing here. This was just where my passion was. And now I'm a psychotherapist. I have a private practice here, but I also run groups and workshops. I have a studio in Austin, Texas. I have a woman that I work with, and we have these workshops called Deep Feeling, Power and Practice of Deep Feeling, and that's what I'm up to.
Was there anything in particular that like pushed you in that direction, like an event that happened in your life where you're just like, okay, I need to stop everything and just go try this psychosomatic therapy?
It was just, I think, for me, I was just looking for something that was really authentic, and acting, that's the goal of in any scene that you're acting in. What you're trying to do is be as honest, as real, and as authentic as you can be. That's when the scene really works well. And that's not an easy thing to do in television, because making TV, it's like you're working in a factory. You're just churning out the material, and you're working very, very quickly. So you can have moments of authenticity where you have the time and space to really explore. But I found it got a little rote and uninteresting to me. And as much as I appreciated the opportunity to work and the success that I was having, it just got a little bit boring. And I found with this therapy, particularly doing it in groups, that there was the opportunity to really explore and go deep inside myself, which for whatever reason, that's what I was interested in. I've always been interested in that. I've always been on that path, that psycho-spiritual path. And this was a place that I could bring all of myself. I didn't have to hold back anything. I could scream, yell, hit, cry, rage, and everything inside me was allowed to come out. And it helped me understand myself in a deep way. And, again, I don't know why I'm interested in the things that I'm interested in. I don't know that anybody really knows why. Like, you just follow what's, your own curiosity. And so I had a great teacher and her name was Ann Bradney, and she was a genius. And the first workshop that I did with her, which was a week-long workshop at the Esalen Institute in Big Sur, California, I had my own deep breakthroughs and power. I've had a powerful experience. But, at the end of the workshop, after watching her work for a week, I just thought, I want to be able to do what she does. And I want to know what she knows. I don't know why. And I was 35 at the time. I was at the height of my success as an actor. And it was in that moment that my whole career trajectory changed. I didn't know exactly how that was going to play out, but I kind of had a sense. So again, I'm just following it, just following my interest, following my curiosity, following my passion.
Very nice, man.
Seems like you're just following your intuition and such. I was wondering, it seems like in Hollywood there's many stories, like Jim Carrey is a perfect example of someone who got repulsed by Hollywood and ended up leaving Hollywood. Was that a similar situation with you, or was it just you're following your interest to whatever the next chapter was?
It started out me just following my impulse, but once I got out of Hollywood, I really realized all the bullshit that I had bought into. There's a kind of narcissism there. I mean, and I don't even say that as a judgment. I mean, if you're an actor, you sort of have to be self-obsessed. Like you're on camera, you have to be thinking about yourself and how you look and how you're coming across. And you're looking in the mirror all the time. You're checking how your body looks. Like, it's just part of the job. But it's its own disease, and it has all kinds of fractal impacts on you. And you, I think, lose perspective on reality. And when you become famous, your ego can definitely come in and want to tell you that you're special, you're different, the rules don't apply to you, you're better than other people because you're famous, because you're on a TV show, because you have money. And I think that's a very dangerous thought process. And I only realized after the fact that I had been subjected to that kind of virus had seeped into my mind, and it was distorting my thinking, and it wasn't making me happy. And so now I look back and I see that it's almost impossible to escape that if you're in that town. It's just what it is. People are obsessed with fame and status and all the material and sexuality. I mean, the distortion of sex in Los Angeles is just insane. So, that's not to say that there's not amazing people in LA that are creative geniuses, good people. There's plenty, and you can find them, and I did. But it's hard to avoid those traps and not fall into them, and I did. And so I was glad to be out of it, and I am glad to be out of it. And those traps are everywhere, honestly. But in Hollywood, it's the air is pretty thick with it, and I think you can see that now. I think people are seeing Hollywood in a new way right now. That there's a darkness that exists there, and it comes at a cost, a very high cost. Not exactly that you sell your soul, but a little bit.
Do you feel like you sell your emotions? Like you have to kind of always just bottle things up because you have to maintain a certain appearance.
Yeah, that's right. There's a way of thinking there. And I mean, you could see that now. If you are conservative in Hollywood, if you don't think like the mainstream, you are ostracized. So there's definitely a groupthink in Hollywood and LA. And you conform to it. I mean, it's a natural thing. You don't even know that you're doing it. You want to be part of that club. You see those people that are rich and famous, and you get there and you want to be one of them. So you unconsciously just conform to their thinking, their way of being, and you agree with their values. It's not even a decision. It's only after the fact that you realize that you may have compromised yourself. So I think you end up, I mean, we all do this, right? We betray ourselves all the time to stay in connection or to get after what we want or to stay aligned with our tribe or with a group of people that we want to be friends with. And, you get to a certain age where, or at least I did, where being true to yourself becomes the number one priority. And because the pain of self-betrayal, the pain of not being yourself, the frustration, you realize that all your frustration comes from that. And it's standing up and being yourself, saying what you think, following your path. Well, that may have some short-term pain and repercussions. Maybe you lose some friends, maybe you lose a community. In the long run, it's for the best, and that's where I'm at now. I that whole experience in LA, I have no regrets, and I have no bad feelings about anyone or anything. Like I said, I think I felt really supported. I met and was associated with a lot of great people, but I'm glad that I'm out of it. And it feels like a lifetime ago. It's like it was like another person that who I was when back then. And but again, I'm grateful. It was a unique experience. It was to be in LA and to see all that up close. And but I'm here now in Texas.
I wanted to ask you, do you run the workshops yourself, or do you have a team that runs them for you, or how does that happen?
Yeah, I have I do there's men's workshops that I do. I run those by myself. I often have an assistant, and then I co-facilitate with a woman. Her name is Angela and she went through the training program with me. Has a similar story. She was an actress. She came from Broadway. She was a singer, actress, and we just have a very similar sensibility and work really well together. And there's something about having a man and a woman in the room together when you're doing therapy. Because of course, there's always childhood work. And so we kind of, whether people are conscious of it or not, we end up representing the mother and the father for people. So working with her is, it just makes the workshops more powerful. But it's really just us. We have an assistant that we work with that helps us organize and administrate the workshops, but they're generally smaller, intimate workshops, like 25 or less people, because of the nature of the work. Yeah, we just we get in there, and it's deep, it's personal, it's we're dealing with people's trauma, really, and so you have to be careful, tender, with it. There's a responsibility there, because everybody's walking around with pain and disappointment and frustration and fear, certainly. And so that's what these workshops are about. It's an opportunity for people to come in and connect with that aspect of themselves to hopefully liberate some of their repressed feelings, so that they can see where they might have distortions in their thinking, where they might be avoiding certain things in their life, and so they can be more free to make real conscious choices. Because of course, when most of us in different ways and are motivated, whether we're aware of it or not, by the things that happen to us in childhood, unconsciously. That there's a deep driving force. And that's what I realized. I realized that very early on in my therapies when I started in my mid-20s. But it wasn't until I started doing this work and got into the depth of my feeling that I realized, like, holy shit, I'm completely governed by my unconscious emotions. My whole acting career was based on that, right? Like, I was not seen by my mother. So, and my mother needed me to be special for her, right? And so I became an actor to be seen and to be special for my mother. That was the unconscious driving force. Now, there was also an aspect where I wanted to express myself, and I was good at it, and it's good to be, to do something that you feel good at. But that other motivating force was there. I was trying to to win the love of my mother, to affirm my worth in the world. And that's not a good thing to be doing. You don't, that's not what you want to be motivated by. You want to be motivated by your higher self, by your, your deep sense of ambition or purpose, not by a compensation. And so, we're helping people try to come to terms with the places where they may be motivated, whether it's in their career or in relationship, by some of the distortions, some of the trauma from their childhood.
And would you say like trauma in general is a bad thing, or is there ways to channel trauma to make use out of it or make it drive you towards that spiritual place? Do you have to like get rid of it, or do you need to embrace it?
It's a great question.
Thank you.
Well, we all have trauma. You can't escape. Life is traumatic. Life is hard, right? And none of us are cared for perfectly by our parents, loved perfectly. And the world is a crazy place. And I don't think that generally people are not nefarious and bad. I think most people are doing their best, including our parents. But we get hurt, we get lied to, we get gaslit. We get ignored, and sometimes we get abused, and there's all kinds of ways that can happen. So it's inescapable, really. We all have pain and fear from our childhood, from living. And the truth is that often our greatest gifts come from our trauma. We adapt to survive in some way to our situation, and that adaptation is that process of adaptation. We're going to draw on something that is some part of our essence. For me, because I grew up in an environment where there was no safety. My dad wasn't around. My mother was very young, and she was, very wonderful person, but a little prone to hysteria. And so the environment I grew up with didn't feel safe. So I became extremely vigilant and sensitive. And I could see things. I needed to see my environment very, very clearly to survive, and read people, right? And read situations. And that's what I do in my work. And I'm part of the reason that I'm really good at what I do is because that's what I had to do to survive my childhood. So like I developed the skill that I have is essentially from my trauma. Now there's a way that I can be hypervigilant, right? And so I want to make sure that I understand, like healing my trauma is understanding that I am safe now, that I don't need to be hypervigilant, that I don't need to be reading every situation or deconstructing every situation, because there can be a neurotic quality to that. And, my girlfriend will attest to that. Any issue in the relationship at all, I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? Like I have to get to the heart of it. And there's some way that's good, good. It's like, oh, okay, we're not, but it's also like, you can let some things slide. Like, it's okay. Like human beings, we're not always perfectly in our integrity or always telling the truth. It's okay. You can let things slide and not worry about it. So, that's something in me that I have to keep an eye on. So there's always, what's that Leonard Cohen quote, the crack, our crack is how the light gets in or gets out or something. That idea that it's in our wounding that our greatest gifts they emerge from that. So yes, I don't like to pathologize trauma. Like there's something wrong with you. It just is. Everything just is. Like, it's the thing that I say to my clients. There's no problem. Something happened to you. The event is always neutral. You reacted to it in a way that's neutral. All you want to do is be aware of what happened and allow yourself to feel the feelings that the child couldn't feel, so that you can be more conscious and free of how that impacted you. And so that it's not continuing to impact you now in your adult life. So you're essentially not living out a script that was written when you were 5 years old, 6 years old, 9 years old. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. Beautifully
it's
said. Yeah.
beautifully said and very, very deep. I feel like we've already gone really deep with this podcast, so maybe I can ask you something a little fun.
Yeah, for sure.
What's what's your favorite like acting role you've been part of? If you would have to say like out of your whole acting body of work, what's something you're most proud of to be part of?
Well, I think, the obvious answer is I'm most proud to be part of Gilmore Girls because
Mhm.
that show has become a classic,
Right.
worldwide classic television show, one of the all-time great, most popular shows. It's amazing to me. We started that show, I think in 1999, 2000 maybe.
Mhm.
And so what are we, 22 years later, and it's people are still watching. It's still incredibly popular. It's a whole new generation of mostly girls that are watching it. And I still get notes and emails, and there's, so it like
Mhm.
that's a rare thing.
It-
And so just to be a part of something like that it's
mhm.
deeply gratifying.
Well, it's like well, that show was so huge, and your character in that show was kind of a bad guy. You know, he had like all kinds of faces to you, right? You had
Had the
some good,
leather
you had some
jacket
bad.
look.
Exactly. And it's like I'm just wondering, like right now, so you're doing therapy with, groups of people and such, and versus when you were acting, you were like impacting a lot more people.
Mm.
Um, have you like noticed and like as your performance it has impacted people. Is it different than what it's like to work with people individually? Like, you notice a difference? Is that, um, yes,
Well, I'll answer your question as I think that I understand it.
yes.
One of the things that happens is when you're an actor is that you get a lot of projection, transference onto you. So, you go out into the street and people recognize you and they're like, "Oh my God, Christopher!" And they don't really see you. They see the character and they see their interpretation of the character. And I started to realize early on, it's like, oh, I'm the dad on the show. So this person standing in front of me who's having an emotional reaction, they are actually projecting their own relationship with their father onto me.
Mm.
Right. Like
Right.
that's the dynamic that I'm in. And I realized very quickly, like part of my job is to hold, right, for them that transference. Like that I just have to be with them there. It's like, oh, like you're not in real relationship in that way, right? Like,
Mm.
which is normal. And so, but it's a skill that you have to learn and understanding that you come to. And that skill is the same thing as a therapist. Like if you come into the therapist's office, you come to a workshop, people aren't really seeing me. Like I represent something to them. I represent authority, and unconsciously I represent the father. So part of my job is to hold that transference, that projection for them, and to use it and work with it. So the acting really helped me with that skill, and it obviously helped me to be comfortable in front of people, talking to people, being looked at in a way. And I guess the other thing is yeah, it just helped me get more comfortable. And there's skills that as an actor that I use in my therapy, like because we do a lot of different role playing. And so yeah, the skills that I use as an actor, I use in my therapy I think in a very effective way. Now the issue is that I get a lot of some I don't get a lot, but sometimes people, if they've seen the show, they have a relationship with me already before they even come to therapy. So, that takes a minute um, sometimes to get over that hump. But I'm a pretty serious guy and I get down to business. And so very quickly people realize, oh, this guy's, he's not screwing around. Like,
The real deal.
yeah, we're going
Yeah.
in. This is deep. And so they kind of get with the program where they get out pretty quick, like that
Mm.
this isn't Christopher. We're not going to sit around talking about Gilmore Girls. Like we're getting into the shit. And so usually, if there's any of that kind of fandom, we get past it pretty quickly.
Do you have like a, a an activity to like get over it, or you just straight to the point
I just
dive
go,
deep?
yeah, I just ignore, like if there's that in the room, I just ignore it and I just get to work, right? Like,
Right,
and then people kind of get into it. And again, it's like I'll use it. Like, so if people like it's happened, there's been some people who've come to my workshops and they're very obsessed with the show, and it does create kind of a problem. But
mega
again, if
fans.
they're
Yeah.
doing the work, if they're having their experience and they're showing up and they're doing what we asked them to do, then it's fine. It's fine. It's part of it. It's part of my past. It's part of my history. I can't escape it. Right. So I just have to go with it. I don't have any like feelings of like, oh, I wish people would not think of me that way. I mean, that seems ridiculous to me. I mean, I understand it, but it's like it's a gift that I was given. And I think initially when I started doing therapy, there was a lot of people who were like, oh, failed actor becomes life coach. And that was sort of the narrative, right? And I understand, like, if you're on the outside looking in, that might be what it looks like. And so, but over time, you know, I think, especially because I've become more active on social media, more direct in communicating what it is that I'm doing and how I'm doing it and my thoughts on that. I think people are starting to see, oh, this guy's serious about his work, and it seems like he actually knows what he's talking about. So it seems like recently, I guess just with time, something has shifted where it feels like the public is starting to see me more as what I am now and less as Christopher from Gilmore Girls.
On that note, I wanted to ask you about so I don't know if you're aware that your video with Andrew Tate was Andrew Tate's biggest video on Tate's speech before it got canceled, if I remember correct.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you feel about that?
I'm very proud of that. I think it's a great interview, and I'm glad that the fans love and appreciate it. And Andrew reached out to me. He didn't watch the interview for a couple of months, but he finally watched it, reached out to me, and said that's the best interview that's ever been done with me, and I really appreciated it. And he reached out to me recently and said he wants to do another one. It was just before all the chaos. Well, no, he was blowing up, but it was before he got canceled. So we'll see what happens there. But I'm sure at some point we are going to do another interview. I like Andrew Tate. I think he's first and foremost, I think he's fucking hilarious. I mean, the people who can't see that he's funny, they're just missing the whole thing, right? Like he's intentionally provocative, and that's what the culture is. That's what you have to do to get attention. You have to provoke people to get that attention. And that's exactly what he's doing. I could see very clearly that he has very sophisticated views. He's very, very smart. And he's playing a game. He's doing his thing. He's living his best life. I mean, I respect the guy. Do I agree with everything he says? No. But does he even believe everything he says? I'm not sure that he does. He's just talking, man. When you're talking like that, he's just letting stuff through and saying what happens in the moment. And we all do. I mean, that's what we do at my workshops, right? Like, are you going to hold me accountable to every fucking thing I say, to every thought that I have? No, I don't want to be held accountable to that. But that's what the internet is. They take those clips and they show it. And, obviously the reason that he's being canceled, because it's like, why is he canceled? What did he actually say? Right. Like, you can't pinpoint the thing that he did or said. So it's clearly that he's just a very articulate person who's incredibly persuasive. And he is poking right at the contradictions and the lies that exist in the culture, particularly around the bullshit that around men. It's just blaming men for every fucking problem in society is not helpful or useful. And of course that makes men feel shame and small. And I understand feminism, of course. Feminism was necessary and needed, but that's become distorted. And when you blame every problem on one group of people, it's bigotry. Right. And it's a projection, and it's an abdication of self-responsibility. And so I think his message is great. I understand it's provocative. It doesn't provoke me, but I understand why people are having a strong reaction to him. But he's necessary and he's good, and I think he knows what he's doing, and I think he's on purpose and on mission. And thank God for Andrew Tate, is what I say.
Oh man. You mentioned earlier when we were talking about the therapy about how people are expressing themselves, they're saying things that occur to them in the moment, and there's kicking and punching. So how does that work, man? Like, I'm trying to imagine the scenario of just being sat there and all of a sudden you just punch in the air, yelling at your past memories.
Yeah, well, we have tools that we use. So it's like we have a big foam, thick foam, heavy block, and we have like batakas or tennis rackets that you can use to hit. And we have punching pads and gloves, and we have like these big thick mattresses where you can throw the tantrum, like the 5-year-old tantrum. And what happens is, when it's like if you've ever taken a boxing class and you start hitting shit, it's like you start to feel your aggression, stuff starts to come out of you. It's the same principle. Obviously, we're doing it with a little bit more, intention and a different kind of intention. So, but if you, have an issue with your ex-girlfriend or your friend or your dad or your mom, or whoever it is, and you start, and you see them there, or you pick somebody in the group to play that person, and you get into a role play and you let out your aggression and you say all the things that you want to say that you held back, you're going to say a lot of things, and a lot of those things are not going to be very nice, right? Like, fuck you. And there's probably a part of you that wants to kill them, right? And it doesn't mean that you actually want to kill them, but it's like that part of you needs expression. It needs to come out, right? And there's a party that might want to say mean, cruel things to them. And so my philosophy is better to do that in the confines of the therapeutic container where we have an intention, because we're not just getting out the aggression or the cruelty or the meanness for its own sake. We are trying to go, because that's a layer of feeling. And underneath that layer, there's hurt, there's pain, there's fear, and we're trying to get to that. But we have to go through all the different layers. So it's very scary. I mean, the first time my therapist when I started doing this work, and, I think I was 29, 30, asked me to hit, I was like, I didn't want to do it. And he said, why not? I was like, because I don't know what the hell's going to come out of me. And he said, yeah, that's the point. It scared me. I was scared of what might come out of me. And yes, what came out of me was shocking. I was shocked by the level of rage that was inside me. And again, I didn't grow up with, my mother wasn't abusive. My parents split when I was 6 and my dad wasn't around. And like I said, my mom was very young and a little hysterical, but I did not understand the level of rage that was inside me. And I think it's inside most people. I'm certain of it because I've been doing this a long time, and there's nobody that doesn't have some level of rage and anger and aggression inside them. And often it scares them and they feel shame about it. They feel like there's something wrong with them, whether they're aware of that judgment or not. And so getting it out can be incredibly freeing and liberating for them, especially to do it in a room full of people where they're being witnessed and those other people are essentially cheering them on. Because when you see somebody express themselves authentically, even if what they're saying is not nice, it's awesome. It feels good, right? It's liberating. And it's like once people start going, it's like a lineup to get at the block for people to hit and get it out. Everybody wants to get it out. I mean, who doesn't want to do that? Right. I mean, and it's obvious, right? Like as soon as I explain to people what I do, every single person says that would probably be good for me.
Yeah, I want to go.
Yeah, of course. It's like, yeah, obviously, of course it's good. We all need to be doing this, it's just that it's scary and it can feel a little weird and people don't understand it. But once you explain it to people, it just seems like this would be really healthy for society. So if you're getting your aggression out in these rooms, you're probably not taking it out on your husband or your wife or your mother, or your father, or whoever, right? Or your kids. and it helps you understand yourself and integrate all of your emotions. So it's a process. It has a logic to it. We take you through a kind of there's a structure to the workshops. And so it's not like you just come in and start screaming and yelling. It's not like primal therapy, the way you might see it done in the 60s on YouTube or something. It's got a philosophy and a structure, and people get it right away. It takes about, once we explain it and once we do an exercise, they get it. They're like, oh, okay, I get this. And then it's just self-evident.
Yeah, I definitely agree that when you express yourself, you kind of feel a sense of relief and you're more in control, especially when you compare it to that boxing class. Because I do a bit of boxing, and when I go and I'm just like hitting that punching bag, it feels so good right after, and I'm so relaxed. But I also hear that criticism, like that people say. Now I disagree with this, but people always bring this point and they say, well, don't you think you're enabling like a violent expression of that feeling? Like maybe there's a better way of expressing your anger. And maybe if you continuously express your anger violently, then maybe one day in the wrong setting, you'll have that feeling and you might violently act.
Well, I would say I would actually argue the opposite, but I understand what they're saying. There is a place where you don't want to keep revisiting the same thing over and over again. And that's something that can happen. I mean, if you have held back aggression, and it starts to come out, you have to cycle it, right? Like you have to move through it. But at a certain point, you have to move past it. And I had that moment where my teacher said to me, like, where I was continuing to be in that aggression because giving myself permission to feel it. She was like, is this still serving you? And I realized that it wasn't, that I was kind of in another loop. And so then I moved past that and into something that was more authentic, which is when something happens to me and I feel anger, I now understand that what's going on is that I'm hurt, right? Generally, or that I'm upset about something, or a boundary was violated, but why did I let that boundary be violated? Ultimately, it comes back to self-responsibility. That's what we're trying to teach, right? And so I guess the argument that I would make is the more that we can bring consciousness and awareness and understanding to the true nature of our anger and aggression and rage, the less likely we are to act out on it in unconscious ways in the world, right? And that's what I'm holding. That's my intention. That's what I'm teaching. And I think that's true. And I think intuitively we understand that. I think a lot of that criticism, while there is a place where it's absolutely legitimate, often it comes from a place of people who, the question that I would ask that person, or would be maybe thinking in my mind, I would wonder if they were afraid of their own aggression, or that they had aggression come at them from their father or their mother that they were really hurt by. And so of course they made it bad and wrong. And so they don't want to see that. And that's legitimate. That's like understandable. Right. And so you have to be willing to work with that and affirm them and validate that experience. Right. And that happens in our workshops. People will be like, this is wrong. This is bad. This isn't okay. And we work with it. Like whatever comes through is important. So we don't like, I mean, to say that we don't have an agenda isn't entirely true, but the important thing is just to let whatever wants to come through in that moment come through. So the people in our workshops that are expressing doubt or criticism, that's exactly what we want, right? It's because then they're in the experience of like, oh, because in our family, right, if we express doubt and criticism and we brought it towards our parents, very often we were told that we were bad or wrong. You're not allowed to do that. We were shut down. But in our workshops, we're like, oh, okay. Like we're just curious about it. It's allowed. So you can get up and hit, and you can tell me that I'm an asshole. You can tell me that I'm wrong. You can do whatever you want, right? Like the point is the expression, right? Like you're allowed to express anything that you want, however you want, and we will hold that for you and validate it. And then there's something often on the other side of that. But human beings are aggression. We have aggression, aggressive. men and women. I mean, women are incredibly aggressive. It's not just men, right?
Yeah.
It's in a different way, but it's like, well, we know this, I mean, more women hit their children than men. I understand it's because they're around them more, but women hit men, and it's women have a lot of aggression as well. And this is not just I mean, the men, my men's workshops there's definitely more aggression. There's more testosterone. It's just, that's what it is. But the women have it too. Men and women, they'll go at it. And it's a beautiful thing. It's okay. It's just part of being human.
Yeah,
It's better than
absolutely.
bottling it up, right? Like once you bottle up emotions, and then maybe later on, what Amir was saying, maybe then it could come out as at an unknown time. Well, if you do it in a safe environment, maybe later on you can be at peace with your emotions. You can understand, like you were saying. Yeah, it's beautiful. And I'm
Yeah.
guessing you also have a healing process. Like you become at one with your emotions, and you heal that trauma, right? You don't
Yeah.
only
No, it's
hold
not. It's
the
a
aggression.
lot of gentleness in the workshop as well. Like it's because on the other side of our anger and rage is very often is pain, right? Or fear, like we got hurt. And that's a hard place to get to sometimes. And so that's where we're trying to take people. I know that's what happened to me. I mean, my first experience in this work was going all the way into this murderous rage, and I was shocked at the intensity of it. And when I went all the way into it and then through it on the other side of it, it cracked me open, and all of this childhood pain came through that I didn't understand. It was deeply repressed, and I wept, like my whole body was like shaking, like a release, right? And this went on for 15, 20 minutes. All of that had been stored in my body, and it was now being released. So in that moment, it's like, then, yeah, especially this is why it's so powerful to do it in the group, because then you have people come around you, people are touching you, people are holding you, right? And it becomes very, very tender and gentle. And that's where the healing happens, right? I mean, if you see somebody slip on the sidewalk, an icy sidewalk, right? And they break their ankle or something, and it's a busy sidewalk, you're going to see a group of people gather around that person, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just intuitively, right? They're going to form a kind of a wall of protection. And if the person's really in pain, somebody will like hold their hand, and somebody might have their hand on their shoulder or something. They're going to comfort that person. We just do that instinctively. That happens at my workshops. Like, you don't even have to tell people to do that. And you guys, if you were there, you just do it. You just naturally do
Instinctively,
it.
yeah.
So when you see somebody in emotional pain like that, and they're experiencing that, like, it's like I don't have to say anything. The whole group just kind of moves in. And so that tells me that there's an intelligence in human beings, that we know how to heal ourselves, and we know how to heal ourselves in groups. And so it's not like I'm healing anybody. I'm just creating a space for that healing process to emerge naturally. And once people are given permission to follow their natural instincts, it just happens, and you see it, and that's all it is, right? It is, you do need that that gentleness, that tenderness. You need to be able to let in. I mean, that was an edge for me, to let in comfort, to let people touch me, to relax, to surrender to trust, right? That people are going to hold me, that somebody's going to take care of me, that somebody wants to help me. Like, I didn't have that growing up. So I had to cut myself off from that longing that we all have, right? Because I'm on my own, right? I was on my own, and I'm a lone wolf, and that's how I have to do it. So for me to be able to let in other people, let them take care of me, trust that was my edge, right? And that was my work. It was actually quite easy for me to release my anger and aggression. I was quite comfortable with that. So the edge for me was more the tenderness.
Absolutely.
Oh wow, I want to that's the first time I've kind of heard of using physicality in therapy, because usually I just imagine a lot of my friends do is they go on Zoom, they have a person on the other side of the computer, and they're talking their emotions, and sometimes it's even like an AI bot they're talking to, not even a real person. So it's very far removed from their physicality. But what you're explaining is that, oh no, like the psychology and the physicality is actually way more interconnected than we can imagine. And this is like blowing my mind right now, David. I have to go to one of your workshops and see it myself. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's a somatic psychotherapy, somatic
Mhm.
meaning of the body, and it's the mind body connection. So it's all connected, and talk therapy over Zoom can be really effective, helping us understand. And there's a lot you can do with mindset and reframing to help you understand your emotions. That can be very powerful, but there are emotions that are stored in the body, and there's only one way. I think there's not one way. I mean, there's
Yeah.
breath work, there's other, but you have to work with the body,
Mhm.
which is why, listen, this is why, for mental health, people push working out, right? Like you got to move the body, go for a walk. I mean, that's the first thing I with my clients, I'm like, what is your exercise routine? Like, you don't have to be going to the gym every day, but you should be walking at least for an hour a day. Like there has to be some movement. You have to at least be grounding your body, because if you're not in your body, right? Like we are a body. We're not just a brain. Like we are a body. So you have to be in touch with the body. And a lot of us, especially now, I mean, you guys are younger. You've been on the computers since you were kids. I didn't grow up with that, but it's like, so the tendency to become more and more disembodied is there. And maybe that's where we're going. Maybe it's going to some transhumanism. I don't know. But right now, I'm this is what I'm doing, right? Like I'm trying to help people come back into their body, into their feelings, because we are of the body, and that's the way that we can make ourselves whole. And the two things are connected. So if you have energy, emotion stuck in your body, it's affecting the way that you think. There's just no way around it. And it's like, if you have fear that's in your body, right, that you don't know about, as a sensation, right? Like when you experience fear, it's a sensation in your body. Then your mind makes up a story about what that fear is actually about, right? Which is a story which may or may not be true. So how much of life are we missing out on because we're afraid to feel, right? What are you afraid of if you're not afraid to feel? If I'm not afraid to feel anything, then what am I actually afraid of? Nothing, right? It's like, okay, there's, yes, legitimate physical threats, but
Right.
I'm not going to be afraid to take risks. I'm not going to be afraid to ask that woman out. I'm not going to be afraid to ask for the raise or whatever it is. Because what I'm actually afraid of, there's a story that I tell myself about what I'm afraid of. Well, this could happen, this could happen, this could happen, this could happen. But what I'm actually afraid of is the feeling. And so if I'm not afraid of that feeling, if I know I can tolerate that feeling, then it opens life up, right? And then then I can take more risks and live more free and follow my purpose in a deeper way. That's how I think about it.
Right. And I want to ask you, like before and afters of people when they go through this process. Do you notice is there like a behavior change, or is it more of like a perception change with people who go through this process?
It's both. I mean, it's definitely a perception change, and then that usually leads to the behavior change. I mean, first you're trying to encourage people, support people in coming to terms with what actually happened to them. That's a big process, right? Because in some way they're in a lie, right? And so coming to terms with that lie, essentially that distortion, that mask that they've been wearing,
waking up.
Yeah,
right?
waking up. Exactly, right? And you see people doing it now in the culture, realizing, oh shit, we've been, the news is all bullshit. And if you believe that for 20 years, that's a fucking disturbing thing, right? Holy
Yes.
And so, if you've been fooling yourself, for 20 years, thinking life was a certain way or you were a certain way, and you begin to wake up to it, or you understand what was motivating it, that is not an easy thing to come to terms with. So that's like the first step, just the awareness piece of it. And once people come into awareness and acceptance, right, then you can start to have them almost like reprogram them in a way, right? Like you then open up the space inside themselves for something new to emerge, right? So that they can start down a different path. But it's almost, like you have to first unlearn what you have learned, in the words of Yoda, before you can then start down this new pathway. So it's a process. It takes time. It's not something you can come to one of my workshops and you're going to be cured in a weekend, right? Like undoing these patterns it takes time, and it's a practice, right? Like you have to, I encourage all my clients to have some kind of practice, whether that's journaling or meditation or breath work or yoga or something, physical, walking or working out. They need some kind of practice where they're orienting themselves every day to healing, essentially, in some way, and to greater awareness around what's actually happening. Because if you don't do that, you're going to default to the old pattern, right? So you're constantly having to like establish the new, and it's what I say to people. There's nothing mystical about it. It's just practice. It's like anything else. If you want to get stronger, lift weights. And if you do that for a year, you're going to be really strong. If you do it for 5 years, you're going to be really strong. It's the same thing, right? Just practice every day, get your reps in, keep journaling, keep coming to therapy, or do whatever it is you do. And if you do that over time, like, you're going to change, something's going to change, your mindset's going to change. And then inevitably you're going to see different results in your life.
That's pretty deep. I mean, we're kind of running out of time here, David.
Yeah.
I really appreciate your time here today. Abbas and Amir, is there anything else you want to ask before we wrap up here?
I mean, the fan within me really wants to ask if you still hum while you pee.
You know what? It's funny. Yeah, I do. I mean, I sing Lakota songs. I go to Sweat Lodge every Wednesday, and over the last 5 or 6 years, I've been learning a lot of Lakota Sweat Lodge songs. So my girlfriend makes fun of me because, before I go to bed every night, sometimes you go to bed like you want to pee, but you don't really have to pee, and you're kind of standing there like waiting. And then I'm always singing songs. So yeah, she makes fun of me for that. So yes, I do. I don't exactly hum, but I sing Lakota songs, waiting to pee.
That's great, man.
Good
Best
question.
Anything before we wrap up?
Actually, no, I'm good.
All right. And David, last thing, do you have any advice for us young ones here? Young men, we're trying to make our way in the world. Any piece of advice you can share?
Just you follow your instincts as best you can. Like you can't rationalize your way through life. I mean, it's good to make plans. It's good to have goals. It's very important to be disciplined. Stay on the path, keep working out, do all the things. Everybody knows what they need to do. You know what I mean? Don't be smoking tons of weed. Don't be going out getting wasted. Don't be, fooling around with all kinds of crazy women. Like, just like, the path is straight and narrow. And if you walk that path straight and narrow, and trust yourself, because only you know, nobody else knows. There's something inside you that that only you know, and that your authority, your personal responsibility, like you have to make that choice on your own, that nobody outside of you can get it. They can maybe feel it, or that feels right. But ultimately it's like, you have to be your own authority, and you have to be willing to take that risk, stand alone, move in that direction. And whether it makes sense to other people or not, whether it even makes sense to you, right? Like, you have to follow that thing that feels bigger than you. And maybe it's a delusion, maybe it's a premonition. There's only one way to find out. You don't know, and you got to go find out, but it's always going to lead you where you need to go.
Well, thank you for your time, David.
Yeah, thank you guys. Appreciate
really
it.
Insightful. You can find David on his social media, David Sutcliffe. Website, davidsutcliffe.com. We'll leave all that in the bio. I can't wait to go to Texas and then maybe check out one of your workshops. That sounds like a good time. And yeah, thank you. Where else can people find you, David?
Yeah, davidsutcliffe.com. Go to my website. All my information is there. I'm on Instagram at davidsutcliffe33, and I'm on TikTok at Dave Sutty. You go to my website. It's all there. You can find information. Get on my email list for the announcements. Come to my workshops. They're a lot of fun. I know that it made them sound kind of scary, but they're actually really fun and connecting. And I don't know if, we have mixed workshops, and I do a lot of men's workshops as well, but that's where the action is. And stay in touch.
All right. Adios,
Awesome.
amigos.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate
Adios.
it.
Peace out.
Okay.
Thank you.
See you next
Bye-bye.
time.
See you
Bye-bye.
next time.
See ya.
Bye-bye.